Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Get Creative with the Moodle Database Activity. I'm Anna Krasa, Education and Qualifications Coordinator on the Moodle Academy team. And today I'm joined by my colleague Tom Rawson, Education Coordinator. Tom is about a year with us in Moodle Academy team, and this is his first webinar as a presenter. Tom, besides his kind and hardworking personality, he has also brought in our team a lot of magic. So today he's going to share a little bit of this magic with us. So Tom has a lot to say. So as I mentioned before, I would like to ask you to hold your question till the end. Feel free to type them in the chat. I'll be monitoring them, so no worries, we won't miss them. And we will address them all at the end. Tom, the mic is on you.
Okay, hello, and thanks for that nice introduction. I'm Tom from Moodle HQ. This month, September, will mark my 1-year anniversary on the team. Actually, I'm very excited to be here with you today. And today I will cover a bit of the database activity. But since this is an intermediate level topic, I will try to spend a little more time on the technical bits, including organizing your templates, some HTML and CSS. I'll show you a few examples and then we'll try to learn a little bit of JavaScript. And then near the end, I will cover a few ways that you can assess this activity. Just about me, I'm a former English teacher in the Japanese education system with a degree in computer science and a master's in education. So I worked in IT in the 90s for some companies, various companies, and I did some C and C++ and shell scripting programming. But then I became an English teacher in 2001. So I've got a technical background, but I'm not proclaiming to be an expert in any field, especially web development, in which I'm kind of a beginner. I, know a little bit enough to be troublesome. I've learned a bit about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript using my computer science background, so that was helpful to get the basics, but I still have a lot left to learn, and I enjoy doing that. So hopefully let's learn a little bit together today. Also, I just wanted to share that I used Gemini to generate some of the images in this presentation, so I wanted to let you know ahead of time in case there's anything that's a little weird looking. Okay. Let's go on. All right, in Moodle, the big three activities in Moodle, in my opinion, are the forum, the assignment, and the quiz activities in no particular ranked order. I'm sure many Moodle sites, in many Moodle sites, these activities are used the most. Forums are a quick way to start online discussions and Q&A sessions. Assignments can be set up quickly and comprehensively with rubrics to collect students' work, and they can upload files and things. It's pretty easy to do. Quizzes are, of course, popular for doing online testing and assessment, even though the setup is a bit more complicated than either forum or assignment. The testing focus of many institutions is probably the reason why it's popular, or the fact that maybe just a lot of people like a good quiz. There are other popular activities. You got glossary, choice, feedback, lesson, book, wiki, workshop. But I think forum, assignment, and quiz are the main players. Remember, this is just my opinion. Okay. Then there is the database activity. It's unique in Moodle, I think, in that it allows the teacher to create a customizable collection container for just about any kind of thing they want students to collect. In addition to designing the contents that'll be collected via the fields, the teacher can also specify the layout of the activity from the entry screens, the list views, how a list of entries appears, the single view, how one item appears when viewed. And these views can be customized with both HTML and CSS. There's kind of a special bonus. A JavaScript template is available where the teacher, if you know a little bit of JavaScript, can write a bit of code and perform some manipulations on the data as it displays in the different views. And so no other activity in Moodle has the capability to do this much design and customization. It's customizable, flexible, powerful, but it's a little bit challenging to get good at using it. So these are some of the reasons why this activity has become my favorite in Moodle. So whenever I'm asked about doing this or that in Moodle, I find myself thinking, I wonder if I can do this with the Moodle database activity. Okay, let's continue. Database activity enables participants to create, maintain, and search a collection of entries. Each one of the database activities a teacher builds with students becomes a unique and custom database. The idea itself is pretty cool. The structure of entries is defined using different types of fields, such as checkboxes, dates, drop-down list, files, images, text, URLs, and so on. And this slide shows the fields that are currently available in the database activity that comes with the standard Moodle installation. Okay. In the plugins directory on moodle.org, you can find additional fields to explore if these ones aren't enough for you. There's quite a few in there, actually. I just looked recently. Okay, so here are a few example ideas. I'm just going to throw out some ideas you might use the database activity for. I'm not going to show a slide or anything. I'm just going to say them. And as I say some of these example database activity ideas, just try to imagine what kind of field you might choose to use for each kind of data you'd collect. You can type any thoughts or ideas in the chat if you feel inspired, or if you have your own idea for a database, you could also type that in the chat as well to share with other people in this presentation. So let me start. My first idea is, how about a collaborative collection of links, books, and book reviews for a literature class at your school? So what would you use? What kind of fields would you use? And you can type in the chat if you want, if you have ideas for that. I'll throw another idea out. A collection of research articles as journal references. For example, for graduate students making their graduation thesis paper, a way for them to store all of the references they're going to have at the end of the paper. Might be something interesting. I hope you're thinking about ideas. How about a collection of student created photos or posters or websites or poems? And they can be commented on by peers and reviewed for a photography class or a painting class, or even any kind of art class. Be kind of interesting, right? And my last idea is one that I saw somebody doing, and I think it's an excellent idea. How about a list of faculty members' contact information, like administrators could make it? In the contact information, you'd have office hours, office location, profile photos, any notes that you need to know about the faculty member for before you set up an appointment or something. So administrators could have this database available for faculty members. So it might be interesting. It's just more, I'm saying these things more just to make you have a few ideas and think what you might use this very powerful activity for. I see a few people writing. That's great. All right, I'm going to go on here. Yeah, so while I was thinking about how I would present on this topic, my mind came up with many different thoughts and ideas for the best way to cover this material. Yeah, should I be technical from the beginning? Should I actually build a database with you live and try to do that? Or what's the best way to proceed so I don't lose my audience? And then it came to me, I think I should explain how I got so into learning about this activity module using my real world example. I think stories are good for understanding. So let me share this story. So, in my former life as an English teacher at a Japanese university, I was involved in a program for preparing students to study abroad in English speaking countries. The students had 8 classes a week. There were 4 subjects, so each class twice a week. And there was a team of teachers, native speakers and Japanese teachers. It was kind of like a boot camp for study abroad. And the head of the department, my boss, worried that our students might have either too little homework or too much homework. So we got asked to track the amount of time our students spent studying in each of these 4 subjects. So that was a kind of big ask. Like, okay, I got to track how much time the students are studying. At first, we just used paper like a form and we handed it to the students and said, hey, fill this out. Tell us how much you're studying. And, very poor results. The students lost the paper. They forgot to fill it out. They couldn't remember how much time they studied. They, it didn't work very well at all. So we decided to try a technology solution. We went for Google Forms. We used Google Forms, and that was okay, but the setup for it wasn't ideal. Either we had everybody in one giant spreadsheet, or we had to make one Google form per student. And if the student made a mistake while they were entering their log, they had to come and ask the teacher, I made this mistake, can you fix it? And it got really cumbersome. So finally, we decided to try the Moodle Database Activity. It was something I didn't know that well at the time, but I decided to give it a go. So for today, I've chosen one of the 4 subjects. It was called English Reading Skills. Basically, students spend time reading English graded readers a few days a week, and after each reading session, they log their time in the database activity so that we got them in a pattern. Read a book, log your time. Read a book, log your time. At the end of each week, they print out the list view and submit it to the teachers. Okay. So for a bit more background on the database activity setup, we didn't require approval of the entries. If you know the database activity a little bit, you can set it up so that the teacher has to approve the entries that people make, but we didn't require that. And we set up each database activity using the separate groups method in Moodle, and we placed each student in their own group. It was a little bit troublesome to set up, but at first, but once you had it set up, you had the database in the separate groups view, so you could view each student's entries individually by looking at the different groups, one group per student. Okay. Also, the time logs were private, so it wasn't important for to have the students view each other's entries. So as an aside, you can do the same thing by requiring approval on the entries in the database activity and then never approving any of the entries. However, viewing the entries for a single student was a little cumbersome because you had to search for the student or filter by each student. It took a little bit longer than just switching groups. So we ended up going with the separate group method. Okay. So once we chose our fields, so date reported, book title, time spent, book status. So status is, are you still reading or are you finished? Okay. Words in the book and what type of book. Was it a digital book or a paper book? And then any comments. we set up the add entry template, and we kept it simple with no special formatting because it needed to be easy for students to enter on their smartphone. Okay, so this is the edit screen on the slide for the template. The red box is the list of available tags that you can use in the template. Okay, the main database fields are shown at the top of the list, and the system defined fields or field information are shown below. The editor window has each of the fields listed with some text telling the student how to fill in this information. So the add entry template editor window. And you're able to make use of field information tags for this purpose. For example, the field for book title can be used with the hashtag name and or hashtag description tag, and then the template would display book title and whatever had been entered for the description in the field settings. That's very useful because if you change the description in the field settings, the template would automatically update with whatever you changed that description to. But in this example, I chose not to do that in order to provide a bit more information and guidance to the user. So we just made some nice prompts for them. You can see at the bottom, there's a reporting pledge, which we added to encourage the students to be accurate and honest. It also made the process look more official because we had to explain to them, yeah, this is really important. You have to log your study time. We need to know how much you're studying so we don't give you too much homework. Okay. Okay, so the list view template. This is where we can define how things appear when showing the list of multiple entries. There are three parts of this template: the header, and this displays at the top of the page; the footer, this displays at the bottom of the page; and the repeated entry is used for defining how each entry in the database will appear one after the other in the list. Okay, this view gives the users the ability to see at a glance the list of entries made in the database. And with the help of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, there's a lot of ways to create aesthetically pleasing views. Now, one important feature is the Enable Code Editor checkbox. When checked, the editor in Moodle, in this example, it's TinyMCE, which is Moodle 5.0 default editor. And moving forward, it's the default editor, is used to edit the template. When you uncheck this box, the code editor disappears and you're shown a plain text editor that reveals all the HTML. So this feature is useful if you want to, for example, create a table in HTML with the header, body, and footer all connected. So if you use the code editor, it will correct HTML. So you can't leave open HTML tags between the header and the repeated entry in the footer. But disabling the code editor would allow you to leave the tags open in between the different sections. Okay, so the HTML table can cross from the header through the repeated entry and finally to the footer, right? It's also important to remember that the code editor will clean the HTML and code when saving. In some cases, it might remove JavaScript references as a security measure. So, be aware of this when you're editing and adding JavaScript to your template. In one case, I kept wondering what happened to my JavaScript call to print the screen, and it turned out the code editor was cleaning it out. So I had to turn it off to save it. Okay. Historically, when I first started using the database activity and began exploring templates, tables were the default in these templates. And I tried to make the best of that approach. As I learned, using tables for organizing page layouts is, well, it's difficult to do effectively, but more than that, it's much less accessible to users with accessibility needs. Tables are great for showing tabular data, and when they do, you can make them very accessible. But if you're using them for laying out things on the screen, it's not ideal, and it causes confusion for people with accessibility challenges. Now, in the later version of Moodle, the latest versions of Moodle, the database activity has been improved to use CSS instead of tables, and it makes the display more flexible on mobile devices and probably by default more accessible as well. Okay, guys, it's going to get a little challenging from here, okay? I moved away from using tables in the list view template when I was introduced to CSS grid format by my colleague and friend, Adam Jenkins. Thank you, Adam. I don't know if you're out there, but thank you. He patiently explained to me how CSS grid format works for laying out elements on the page in 2 dimensions. Okay, let me back up a bit. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on the screen. CSS can save a lot of work by controlling the layout of multiple web pages all at once. So when you need to change a style throughout a website, oftentimes a change to one CSS element will be all that it takes to make that change. The CSS grid layout module is a part of CSS, and it offers a grid-based layout system with rows and columns, much like a table, but without the restrictions of tables. In this example, CSS, see on my slide, you can see the grid template areas. So there's 2 regions defined for the header. The next row has a menu and some content, and then 2 regions for the footer. This is how easy it is to design the way the page should look at a high level. You can imagine the web page will be like a 2x3 table with a lot more flexibility. Okay, the grid format also allows the template areas to float around the page depending on the size of the screen, which makes this responsive on multiple devices, mobile devices, or computers with wide screens. For reference, I made use of the most excellent tutorials on CSS and CSS grid format on the W3 Schools website. I linked it on the page here. I love that site. I don't know if anybody else has tried this before, but I love it because it has loads of examples and places, and there's a button on there that says, try this, and you just click it, and it opens up an editor and a display where you can play around and learn about the different aspects of CSS and CSS grid. So I recommend bookmarking this site if you want to explore it in your database activity. While you're learning how to do stuff, you can make use of this for like a kind of sandbox. Okay. All right, here is the CSS grid container definition for the weekly reading log. So this is the weekly reading log, that my real world example. Have a look at the grid template areas. Okay. I reserved spaces for each of the fields in the database. So you can see in the grid template areas, you've got date reported, you've got book type, you've got book, you've got time spent. This will be the number of minutes they spend reading. This is the number of words in the book status. Plus, I left some space for some of the system fields like the more button, the edit button, the delete, and a checkbox for making multiple selections if you happen to want to delete entries in bulk. Okay, so these are just areas that I laid out in CSS. Okay, I'm going a little bit along here, so just try to follow along with me if you can. Underneath the template areas, I've defined the size reserved for each of these areas. Okay, so a little technical here. You see 9 REM maps to date reported. So if you look here, it says 9 REM and date reported. And 3 REM lines up for book type. So it's just basically the way you're designing this is just in the order that you put these elements is the order that you put the sizes of these elements. Okay. Now, okay. I know you might be asking, okay, Tom, wait, what is a REM or REM? It's not a rock band. Sorry. It's and what is FR? Well, I'll try to explain it, but just safe to say, these are units of space on the screen, okay? REM is a fixed amount of space given to an element no matter how the screen size changes from wide to narrow. Technically, REM refers to the size of the base font of the page in pixels. So 3 REM would be 3 times the number of pixels. So the example is if your font is, for example, 16 pixels wide, then 3 REM is 48 pixels worth of space. Okay? So that's how it's. Again, this is something you can learn more about in the W3 Schools site, but I'm just explaining it at a kind of high level to give you an idea. All right. FR refers to a fraction of available space. Looking at our fields, there are 10. It's just a lot of fields. So 1/10 is one fraction of space. So 2FR, therefore, is like 2/10 of the available space. It's relative to the amount of space available depending on the width of the screen, I believe, after the other space has been assigned. If this is a bit hard to grasp, really check out the W3 Schools tutorial on this concept. It's going to help you understand it better. And that's how I learned it. Okay. How does this look in practice? Okay. Here is an example of the list view displaying. So at the bottom of the screen here, you can see the grid template areas. You can see each field in their grid area. For example, date reported and book type. In this screen above, you see the date reported, 11 June 2024. The book type, digital. Okay. Then next is book, the little match girl, and so on. So going from left to right. Okay. Even remember, I had a delete checkbox on the far right. That was the last field. So you can see it. You can see it over here, right? Okay. And you see the grid template areas are listed here down at the bottom. Okay, and let's take a look at the sizes. Let's take a look at the sizes. The sizes in this slide. Compare the 9 REM date reported with the 3 REM book type. You see there's more space available for the date reported. There's a bit of white space between the 2024 and the word digital. Okay. Keep in mind that REM is kind of a fixed amount of space, while FR will kind of grow and shrink depending on how wide or how narrow the space is. Keeping the fractional percentage of available space that has been assigned in the CSS. So the book title is a fractional number, 2 FRs, and that, grows and shrinks depending on how wide the screen is. You can see one of the book titles is a little bit cut off because the screen is a little narrow. Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going here. Defining the containers with CSS is the first step, but how do I get the text from my HTML into these containers? So to link CSS with the HTML, there needs to be an identifier. So in our HTML, inside the list view template repeated entry, I have a div tag called with a class, a div tag with a class called date reported. So this is what links the HTML to the CSS and informs where and how this element should display on the page. Okay, so let me continue forward. I'm going to overlay the CSS on top of this HTML. So a box is going to appear on top. Okay. In the CSS file overlaid on the top, there are some definitions. The period before date reported will tell CSS to refer to any element with a class equal to this name. The period in HTML, the div with a class equals date reported will make use of the CSS rules in this period date reported. Okay, what are those rules? Well, the element will be assigned to the grid area called date reported. Remember our grid area from the earlier description? And the contents of this element will have a text alignment of left. So that means the text will be left justified. Okay? Remember our grid template areas. Date reported is the first element in the template area and has a size of 9 rem. So you can add other rules in the CSS2, and each one you add will be applied to the date reported elements after saving the template and refreshing the list view screen. Okay. It's also useful to know that the hashtag is for elements with an ID identifier. So the period is for the class and the hashtag is for the ID. Okay. If there is neither a period or a hash, then any HTML element matching will be acted upon. So in this example, all the H1 tagged elements would have a text color of green. So if you have any H1 tags in your template, they'll all be green. The text in there will appear as green. I hope you can get a basic idea, but of course you can explore this more on your own. All right. Let me show you a few examples, some visuals of a few example database that you can make once you get more confident with CSS. So I've got 3 examples: a pet gallery, some recipes, and some engaging posts. Okay, these are just going to be graphics to look at to get ideas from, okay? So in this gallery, the items appear as a grid of blocks on the screen. And depending on how big or small the screen is, the list view adjusts and the fewer number of blocks appear in the row. Okay. Also, when opening a single view, you're granted a bigger image of the pet, which is something you can configure in the Moodle database image field settings, or you can actually use CSS to do that as well, or both. Okay, so this is a pet gallery. Okay, the next one is a world recipes one. And this recipe database is collected student submissions from around the world. The list view teases images of delicious food, and the detail view shares the recipe to make the food and the procedure for, the recipe of the ingredients and the procedure for making the food. So the recipe, basically. Okay. All right. And this last one is pretty interesting too. This database activity demonstrates both CSS and JavaScript, which we haven't talked about JavaScript yet. And it makes the links to engaging posts in a forum. So the students find a post in the forum, they like it, they come to this database and they paste the permalink in, and it becomes a engaging post and appears on the screen like a post-it. Okay. The JavaScript is used to randomly change the color and the angle of the blocks for each element. Every time you reload the page, these things they're not quite square. They're kind of like, looks like sticky post-it notes on the page. Okay. If you saw something that you liked in these 3 examples, we've got all these presets available to share in the Moodle Academy course associated with this webinar. So you can download them and try them out. The course is opening right at the end of this today's webinar. So we're planning to upload them to Moodle Academy's MoodleNet at some point soon. So you can look out for them there as well. All right. Okay, next, let's talk about JavaScript in the Moodle Database Activity. Let's get a little bit more technical here. JavaScript is the programming language of the web. It can update and change both HTML and CSS. It can calculate and manipulate and validate data. Again, W3 Schools has a lot of resources where you can practice using JavaScript. And I've used this a lot, so I really recommend it. I've referenced it on this slide again. when learning JavaScript to use with a database activity, very useful to have the playground to try things out, rather than continually saving your template in Moodle over and over again and wondering, oh, why isn't it working? So this is a go-to place for me, the W3 schools. So remember, CSS helps define where and how things appear on the screen, and JavaScript has the ability to calculate and manipulate both the HTML and CSS. So looking at my reading log screen, which areas on this example reading log might have been calculated or manipulated with JavaScript? If you look carefully, I'll reveal the answer on the next slide, but which things do you think are calculated by JavaScript if you look on this? We already know which things are laid out by CSS, but which calculations or which manipulations have been done by JavaScript? Do you have ideas? I'm letting you think for a second. I'm gonna go to the next slide in 3, 2, 1. Okay, everything with a square around it has been manipulated by JavaScript. So did you guess correctly? Maybe the total scripts were easier to notice, but the name of the user and the heading of the list view is not something that can be done with the standard template. So template field tags are not available in either the header or the footer of the list view. So JavaScript was used to move data around. Okay. In addition, there's no print form button in the database activity, so this button is also a JavaScript add-on. I hope you guys got some of the answers correctly. It's kind of fun. Okay, so JavaScript, when to run it? JavaScript can run at any time from the start of a web page loading until the very end of a page load, and even continuing on after the load has finished. The important point to remember is that the elements on the web page that you want JavaScript to manipulate must be loaded before that manipulation takes place. If JavaScript runs before the element is displayed, it will not find the element and therefore it cannot operate on it. For most purposes, adding the scripts to the bottom of the footer part of the list template will ensure that the page is completely loaded before the scripts begin processing. So my example screen here shows some JavaScript in the footer. Okay. JavaScript can make use of the same identifiers that CSS makes use of. And for this example, I'll focus on time spent. Time spent is the number of minutes a student spent reading a book for our weekly reading log. Okay, so when the list view displays, the minutes that the student entered is going to appear in that div tag with the class time spent. Okay, so there'll be like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever they spent. Okay. So I moved the tag to the top of the screen here, div class time equals class equals time spent, div. Okay. So overlaid on top of the HTML here is the JavaScript function. The totals JavaScript has to be able to find all the numbers on the web page that refer to the number of minutes a student spent reading a book. There might be 10 rows, 9 or 10 rows of data if a student has logged 10 reading sessions. A function that can go and find all of these elements and add them up is what we need. So since our HTML in the repeated entry of the list view template contains the class time spent, class equals time spent identifier, we can use a function that gets elements on the web page based on the class name. This function, get elements by class name, is able to do it. You can see I've highlighted in blue here. Note that this function is connected to the word document with a period. Okay, document is a reserved word in JavaScript that refers to the entire web page document. So the function get elements by class name is operating on the document or the web page itself. Okay, the word time spent is passed into the function to identify which class we are looking for to the function. Okay? Functions in JavaScript that run will return a pointer to the data they have collected. In this case, in the case of this function, it will be an array. I'm not sure if you know what an array is, but I'm going to assume that an array is a list of items and data. Okay. It's items with that class name. Our example was what, 9 or 10 rows of data. So this example, it's going to return 9 or 10 rows of data, depending on how many entries are on the page. Okay. We store this pointer to these elements in a variable called time elements. Okay, so a variable is a part of a JavaScript function. You can define variables you need to perform operations on the way. You can define as any number of variables you need to perform these operations. So in this case, we're using the constant time elements to keep a pointer to the list of minutes read div tags, okay, that are identified by the time spent class. Okay, I'll go to the next page. We initialize the total number of minutes read to 0. So we're starting to process this one page, and we're going to start from 0. This variable will be used to store the total minutes the student has read as we loop through the array of time spent elements. Okay, so total time. Okay, I'm going to go on. This syntax might be familiar to the programmers among us, but in case you aren't familiar with this, this is what's known as a for loop. The for is the start of the loop. A loop is a process that repeats multiple times, okay? And the conditions, let I equal 0, etc., tell us how many times to go through the loop. So we're going to start from 0, and we're going to loop through the length of the time elements array in our example. Remember, we have what, 9 or 10 entries, so we should be going through 9 or 10 times, all right? I++ just increments the loop counter by 1 each time we hit the end of loop curly brace. So when it comes down to the curly brace and goes back to the top of this loop, the I++ is going to make it equal to the next number up. So it starts from 0, the next time through it'll be 1, the next time through it'll be 2, okay? Right? Okay, we get the contents of the time elements sub I. So when you use that sub I function, you're accessing one element of the array of items that you collected. You collected a list of items, 10 of them, and to access just one of them, you have to give an index. Okay, so we're accessing time elements sub I. This is the first element in the array as we go through the loop the first time. So time elements sub 0 would be the first element. Okay. Also notice the inner HTML function. This takes the value of what's inside the HTML div class, which is our time spent reading. So you have a div and a slash div, and then inside will be what's inside that HTML. Okay. The next function, parseInt, has to take that value and turn it into a number. So you and I know that the value on the screen is a number, but JavaScript doesn't. It just sees everything as kind of alphanumeric text or something. So the 10 in that function says parseInt value as text 10, okay, is a radix, which says convert this text into a number with the base 10, okay? And that conversion is going to happen, and it's going to be assigned to value as number. Okay, I'm going to go on. Now that we've actually converted the value to a number, we need to double check that it actually is a number. In JavaScript, if something gets processed like a number, but it is not a number, the value will be NaN, which is short for, guess what? Not a number. Okay, so for example, if they typed in the word 20, and you tried to convert the word 20 into a number, it would just say NaN. Okay. The exclamation mark that you see in this if statement is for checking not the opposite. So to confuse you further, this function is NaN, checks if the value is equal to NaN. Is the value equal to NaN? With the exclamation mark in front of it, we are checking for not NaN, i.e., is a value as number not NaN. Therefore, it is a number and we will add it. We will add the value as number to the total time. Total time. The plus equals is a kind of shorthand for total time equals total time plus value as number. It's a shorthand. Okay. All right, I hid the previous scripts because there wasn't enough space on the page. So let me continue to the end of the loop. Once we finish our loop, we need to find the place on the web page where we want to display the total number of minutes. In our list view template, in the footer, we have a div tag with that's with an ID set to total time spent. So IDs are fields on web pages that should realistically only occur once. Okay, this is an important point because we're using a different function to find that element. Okay, get element by ID. Notice there's no S like get elements by class name. The name of the function is a hint that you're only supposed to find one. So if you're having errors in your script, this could be one thing to watch out for. Okay. One more check to make sure the total display element with ID equals total time spent exists. It's good practice to cover for any possible error that might occur. So we're just checking, did we find the ID equals total time spent element? And if we did, the final step, replace the total time into the inner HTML. So we're saying total display element dot inner HTML equals total time dot to locale string. Okay, that will replace the BR tag with the number, which will be our total. The to locale string is kind of a formatting function. It will format the number to our current locale's numerical style. For example, if there are 1,000 minutes that the student read a book, there'll be a comma in there, unless you add, unless your locale formats long numbers differently. Okay. So I'm just going to go to the next slide and just bringing back our list view, we can see the total minutes red displaying in the footer shown in the red box. Well, that's what that function did there. Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going. Troubleshooting, just a quick word on troubleshooting. When you write JavaScript, inevitably you have to debug your scripts. Knowing how to make things appear in the browser's JavaScript console log is useful for solving logic problems. Here I've added a log in the middle of the loop that counts the totals. So if the totals weren't adding up the way I expected, this might help me see why not. Okay. And just showing you a quick screenshot of the JavaScript console log. To see the JavaScript console in most browsers, just right click on the page and choose inspect. Then you can find the console. Here in this example console, you can see the total time values appearing in the loop. Every time it goes through the loop, it prints out total time, total time, total time. So you can see it's adding up correctly. That's an example. Okay, guys, that's the end of my JavaScript discussion, and I've got a little bit more to talk about, so you guys are doing great. Hang in there. I just want to spend a few minutes giving you some ideas about how to assess these activities. In general, I've used 3 methods of assessment in the database activity, and 2 of them are probably well known and used by many, since they're highlighted in documentation and videos about Moodle Database Activity. Okay. The first one is ratings. So roles with permissions to rate are roles with the capability Moodle rating, rate, plus any activity specific rating capabilities. The default's generally a manager, teacher, non-editing teacher. Students don't have the role to rate unless you give them this capability. Remember that when ratings are used, the grades go in the gradebook for the database, so you have to consider carefully when using peer assessment if you want students giving grades to each other. I think it's okay to let students grade each other. But if you have multiple entries per student in the database activity, it can get tedious if you wish every entry to have a rating. If each student has made 10 ratings and you want every student to rate everybody, they're just going to be there forever. So I kind of recommend ratings for a database activity with 1 or 2 entries per student. It makes it more sane for the graders, the raters. Okay. You can also use this method I found particularly useful when assessing the time logs because for students, put the grades for that activity in an assignment with no submission. You can create assignments in Moodle easily. You can actually say no submission for this assignment. And there are benefits for both the teacher and the student in doing this. You could have the database activity open in one window and the assignment with a rubric or otherwise in another window. Then as you check each student, you mark the rubric and you make comments. It's kind of useful. That's another way of doing it. Okay. And the third way, I call it the offline grading method. There's 3 steps. If spreadsheets are your thing, you can make use of the database activity entries by downloading them in a CSV file, processing them in a spreadsheet, and making use of the offline grading worksheet feature in the assignment with no submission. You can upload the grades and feedback right into the assignment for each student in bulk. The steps are first, export the database entries, then import them to your favorite spreadsheet app, perform some calculations on the data, and perhaps use a rubric in the spreadsheet to determine a grade, and then finally upload the grades and feedback into the assignment. Students can see how they did on that particular database activity. Here's an example of feedback generated by the CSV data from a weekly reading log. So we gave students a goal of reading more than 3 days each week and more than 30 minutes per day. They had a goal of reading 15,000 words in a week, and they could achieve this. If they could achieve this, they'd get 100 points for that week's assignment. So one useful thing about the feedback comments in the assignment is that HTML formatting is supported. So I had the spreadsheet generate the appropriate HTML for bold and colors based on reaching the goal, green versus falling short of the goal, red. So this example is not showing any red, which is good. I probably went a bit overboard with the colors and calculations, but when you use a spreadsheet to evaluate database activity entries, you can do almost anything. In the future, if the Moodle database activity can tap into the rubric system that Moodle assignment uses, there would be no need for separate assignment for grading. We're not quite there yet, but that would be great. So those are 3 ways to assess the database activities. I hope you got some ideas there. Okay, guys, we made it. We've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. Just to review, we've covered a bit of database activity, some templating, some HTML and CSS. We looked at a few examples from my friend Adam. Thank you, Adam. And then we saw a little bit of JavaScript. We also touched on some ways you can assess this activity. I hope you were able to take something from all of this. I kind of threw a lot of information at you without much pause. Thank you for coming along to the presentation, and I appreciate your attention. Hey, let's move on to questions. Maybe I can go back and answer a few. We've got a few minutes, hey, Anna?
Yes, of course. Well, let me take things back from the
Sure.
forum. At the beginning, you asked about which fields could be used for several cases. And Marie said that for links and book reviews, I would use at least URL and text area. Malvina said for book review, image for the cover, URL and text area. Luigi
That's great.
said that a very interesting use of the database activity is for contribution submissions for the Moodle moods and user information, working with Moodle group links, Padlet with some specific preset.
Oh, very
Rob
good.
said that he would use article name, categories, links, and column fields. Um, Mary is asked if there is a feed like button where students could click if they find an item useful. So can you please address this one?
Uh, so that's from Marie, right? Uh,
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Very interesting question. I assume that if you turn on ratings, you can use a scale in ratings, and you could set a scale in Moodle, and the scale could be like, you could create a scale of like or so or not so good or something, and then they could click on the rating to rate the item as liked. You could do something like that. So yeah, that's a great idea. I think you'd have to create uh, a custom scale for that. Yeah. Right, that's what you
Malvina,
wrote. You wrote back. Good. Yes.
yeah. Malvina asked not asked, suggest a few more ideas on using database for job ads, partners for
Mm.
Erasmus program, courses available in a program, tree and plants on a campus. Mary said that it was very interesting to have that comparison between forms and database.
Ah,
And
yes.
Rob said that I've been interested in using the database resource to create an inventory for a small team slash office. It would simply keep a record of all individual computing stock for the team, laptop details, mobile phone, and other equipment each staff member was allocated. And
Well, that's a great idea. I think that's an excellent
yes,
idea, Rod.
I think that if he takes the course, he will manage to do it. Uh,
Hmm.
Presmek, I think I said that correctly, sorry, asked if you had a tool for automatically allocating users to the group, a user to group.
So I think Prezemic is referring to the fact that I used separate groups and I had only one student in each group. Good question. And the answer is no, I did not. I just auto created groups and then I renamed the groups into be the student's name so that each student was in a group with their own name. So yeah, it was a little bit of trouble at first, Prezemic, but I only had to do it once at the start of the semester, and then I could reuse that for the whole semester. Uh, you know, as a grouping of groups, I just kept assigning it to the different database activities. So yeah, you could also, if you have admin powers on your Moodle site, you can include the group into the enrollment of the person into the course. So you could create them in a spreadsheet really quickly with the correct names that you wanted. So hopefully I answered what you're asking. Yep.
Well, Adam was surprised with the reference, but yes, Adam is here through all the time. Yeah, and a lot of people guessed correctly about the JavaScript's totals and the calculations. Very clever comment from Justin. You're manipulative. And a note from Adam, speaking for
Yes,
JavaScript, that there can be only one hashtag, but many. And Victor said, keep in mind these totals will be only calculated for records currently visible in the list view. If you change
that is
page
correct.
size from 10 to 50 or navigate to another page, totals will change accordingly to what is available in the HTML source. And
That is totally correct, Victor. Very correct. You are right. I didn't mention that, but you're totally correct with that. Yes.
yep. A lot of people appreciated that comment. Well, rubrics for database, that's a powerful idea, I must say. And yes, Brendan says that you are a magician. See what I'm talking about? And okay, excellent comments, a nice presentation to see what's going on behind the scenes in the database resource tool. That's from Rob. I'll probably need to enroll into the academy course and rewatch this again when it's published. It will be published soon. And everything, yes, everything, templates, presets, everything will be set. Okay, I think that was all. And I think we can move on wrapping up this session.
Przemyk just commented back on the making a plugin for creating single user groups. I think it's a great idea, Przemyk, but let me know how you go with that. Maybe you can consign someone to help you make it. It would be great.
I can't remember, but I think that there is a plugin that could work for this auto creation of groups. I think, but it's a bit fuzzy memory. I should check. But before moving on, building that one, go check to the database of the plugins.
Yeah, or Adam mentioned maybe a filter. Maybe if you had like the alphabetic filter at the top, you could just look at the students whose name starts with R, or the students whose name starts with S, or something. Yeah, good idea, Adam. That'd be something good.
I was thinking more along the lines of if you had a filter like on the browse list of users page where you can filter by name or email address or something like that. A user filter.
You can actually. Yeah, in the list view, you can actually filter by name. If you open the advanced filter, you can set it to let you filter by name, but it's a little bit cumbersome to keep changing the names. So that's why we ended up going with the separate group idea, because you just had a little drop-down menu at the top, and you could just switch groups very quickly.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so yeah, good point though, Adam. Good point. Definitely.
Thank you, Adam. Because it seems that a lot of things being said here were inspired by you. So, yep.
Yeah, Adam is a great foil to have because it's good to bounce ideas off him and others in our community, and we help each other, we inspire each other to try new stuff. So I'm always grateful to have that.
That's the Moodle way, I guess.
Thank you guys very much too, because I come in here and I'm learning a lot of new stuff myself. So thank you very much.
Excellent.
Awesome. Should we move on to wrap up this session?
Yeah.
No,
we can wrap up.
We are already 5 minutes after the hour, and most comments are thanks. And so that was really interesting. I hope you have enjoyed this session, and we would love you to consider getting involved further and help us grow by contributing to the development of Moodle Academy. You can do this by visiting our Get Involved course, which you will find in the front page of the Moodle Academy site. You can suggest ideas for new webinars and courses, and you can vote on ideas that have been suggested by others already. We are always lookout for community members to help present the webinars and co-create short online courses. So think about it. And we would love your help also making Moodle Academy more inclusive. So if you are able to, please go to our Translate Moodle Academy course and get started with helping us translate our courses and webinars into other languages. And of course, please help spread the word about Moodle Academy by telling your colleagues about the courses we offer and the webinars we run. When you complete a course, you will earn a badge. Educators and administrators might also like to think about getting Moodle qualified with the Moodle Educator qualification or the Moodle Administrator qualification. You can learn more about these qualifications from the Moodle Qualifications blog in the Academy homepage. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you find this useful, and I hope to see you on the next Moodle Academy course forums and, of course, upcoming webinars. Thank you, everyone.